I've never wanted to write a true crime story only because the ending is already known to everyone. I like to keep people in suspense towards the end. But I think the reality of these crimes that I've seen definitely flavors the books that I write. And because I know how a victim feels. They sat in my office and have told me. I know what it feels like when someone's son was murdered because they've told me. And then I've watched them in courtrooms break down. And I know what evil looks like because I've seen it. As a prosecutor, you're given a defendant and a set of facts, and your job is to go take this to the jury and paint the picture that they need to see. Your job is to get the conviction and to put him behind bars. I first thought of the idea for Cupid, my first book, which is Retribution in English, when I was prosecuting a serial rapist in Miami. The defendant was 17 and he had raped 7 young women. The case that I particularly had involved 2 young women, 2 sisters, who were only 13 and 14, and they were walking home from school one day when he popped out from behind a building with a gun, forced the sisters behind the building, raped one, and then made the other one watch. And so here I am, we're in the courtroom, and the victim, the girl who was actually physically raped, well, she was very articulate and composed, and she could answer my questions. But her sister was still in shock a year later, and she could barely answer my questions. And so I'm looking around the courtroom, and it's a very emotional part of the testimony, and the audience is crying, and the members of the jury, some of them are crying, the judge is upset. And the only person in the room who didn't care was the defendant. And I thought to myself, what if this girl could be me? What if she could prosecute this guy? You know, what would she do? Would she seek justice or retribution? And from there, the idea for Cupido came into being. So I try to take the experiences that I had at the state attorney's office and then working with the police, and I try to bring them into all of my books, because I think that's really what makes it scary. Anybody can write a scary chapter. You know, it was a dark and stormy night and a man came out of the bushes with a gun. And that's scary just in and of itself. But, you know, I think having worked with individuals, I know what it feels like when you see the guy come out of the bushes with the gun. I think a book should not just entertain you, but a book should educate you. Whether it's a fictional book or, you know, true crime or a historical, it should educate you. You should learn something that you didn't know. So my children, since they were 2, know. And if you ask them back then, they give you the same answer they will give you today. I know. Run, scream, jump, let him stab you, let him shoot you, whatever, do not get in that car, because once you're gone, mommy will never see you again. That's the honest truth. If they get in the car, mommy will never, ever see you again. And you know, thank God no one ever tried to get my kids in the car. But I'm pretty confident that they would have ran, screamed, jumped, kicked, gotten shot, and gotten stabbed before they got in that car, because they know what a bad guy does. Every author is really scared about not finding the next book. You know, that's probably a subject of a Stephen King book, you know, writer's blog. I fortunately don't have that. I have multiple plots lined up. I'm very lucky. And I never know when they're going to come. The one I'm writing now came to me. I was driving my daughter, who was 12 at the time, or 13 at the time, to school. And at a stoplight, boom, the whole thing popped into my head. So much so that I finished dropping her off, I get out of the car, I kicked her out, I drove home, and I wrote the whole thing out in an outline. And I said to my husband, got the next book? It's very easy for me to distance myself from what I do. I like to think it's almost like therapy, you know, because it's, you get to explore it and pull it out in a book, and it doesn't haunt me anymore because it's out. I'm not a therapist, but I'd like to think writing a book is cathartic, you know, it works to get the bad guys out. Yeah, it's a perfect day for me where they could, oh, well, now I'm thinking, I know what my friends would say. They can take me shopping. That would be lovely. Fly me to New York, let me loose on Fifth Avenue with a credit card with no balance, and set me inside Saks Fifth Avenue's shoe department and say, Jilliane, pick anything you want. That's a perfect day.